Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Please hype me on YouTube. Thanks. I was 13 the summer my mother made me promise never to go near the locked room at the back of our farmhouse. She didn't just say it like a rule. She seized my wrist, her nails biting crescents into my skin, and hissed the words like they were the only thing keeping her from collapse. Promise me, Elena, that door isn't yours. Don't touch it. Don't listen. Don't even breathe too close to it. Her face was pale, lips cracked, eyes shot with red veins. The broom she had braced across the frame rattled against the wood from the tremor in her hand. I promised, the way children promise when they sense they're being asked for something larger than obedience. At 13, I didn't understand what I was swearing to, but I saw the terror in her face and knew it wasn't only about me. It was about her, about guilt written into her skin. The door stayed closed. The house aged around it. And the silence that gathered there was a silence that grew teeth. By 24, I was back under that roof, not out of choice but failure. I'd fallen out of a job, out of an apartment, out of the kind of relationship that leaves you hollow, bruised, and broke. My mother opened the farmhouse door without surprise, like she'd known the orbit of my life would drag me back. The house had not changed. The wallpaper peeled like old scabs. The windows rattled against every gust. The back hallway still carried a breathless chill, the floorboards groaning with a pitch that suggested something stirring underneath. And at the end of that hallway, the door waited. It wasn't unusual in shape or size, just another farmhouse door painted once cream, now yellow with time. But the air near it was heavy, thick like humidity without heat, as if sound itself warped. The closer I stood, the more my ears filled with a faint buzzing too low to name. On my first morning back, I carried a basket of laundry down that hallway and stopped dead. 3 knocks. Soft, deliberate. The rhythm so exact it froze me. The basket slid against my hip as my body locked. I stood listening, pulse quickening in my ears. Then it came again. 3 steady taps, a pause, 3 more. Air pushed out from under the door. Metallic, sharp, the scent of rust bled into my nose. I stumbled back, the basket clattering to the floor. Upstairs, my mother clattered dishes. She didn't hear, or she pretended not to. That night I dreamt the knocking. Not loud, not violent, just patient. 3, a pause. 3 again. At breakfast, I forced the words out. I heard something. From the door, my mother froze. The spoon hovered over her bowl, dripping milk. Slowly, she set it down, her hand trembling. Her voice dropped to a whisper that sounded older than her body. Your father's body is buried under that promise. Don't dig him up. The words hit harder than any answer I'd braced for. Buried. Not just dead. Buried. I wanted to press her, demand clarity, but her face shut down. She pushed away from the table, slippers whispering on the floorboards as she slipped down the hall and out of sight. She never spoke of it again. Patrick did. My brother, 28, drunk more nights than sober, working construction jobs until his temper or lateness got him fired. His boots always reeked of mud, his knuckles scraped from bar fights. When I asked him, he didn't laugh. He only leaned back, eyes half glazed, and muttered, Dad didn't die of cancer, Lena. That's what we told people. The story we carved in stone so no one would whisper. He died here. He gestured vaguely toward the back hallway with the neck of his beer bottle. He died because of it. What is it? Patrick's lip curled with a bitter smile, though his eyes carried no humor. Some things don't want naming. Don't ask again. But once you hear your own name whispered through wood, once you breathe rust in your morning air, silence is no longer an option. At the diner, I tried to forget. Nights stretched under fluorescent lights at Casey's Route 15 diner, where I poured coffee for truckers and wiped down booths sticky with syrup. The ceiling fan ticked lazy arcs. The neon outside hummed against the dark. Exhaustion dragged at me by dawn, blurring the world at the edges. That was when it returned. 3 knocks. Always at dawn, always as I unlocked the farmhouse door. Sometimes, not just knocks. Voices. A child's voice, thin and bright, seeping through the wood. Elena. The first time, I pressed my palms over my ears, rocking back against the wall. whispering no until my throat ached. The second time I pressed my ear to the door. Laughter rose on the other side, light as bells, but dissolved into sobs. The smell worsened. No longer just rust, but something sour, damp, like cedar rotting after rain. It spread into the house, into me. Once I found a film of dust at the bottom of my sealed travel mug. My coffee carried the tang of iron. My chest tightened. I coughed in front of customers, phlegm streaked with brown. I told no one. Until the night my phone lit up with my father's name. The cracked screen glowed. Dad. I dropped it. The phone buzzed on the linoleum like a trapped insect. I picked it up, my thumb trembling as I swiped. Static poured into my ear. Beneath it, guttural sound, words stretched to breaking. Unlock it. Let me out. I hurled the phone across the kitchen. It shattered against the wall. The echo lingered in my skull. The next morning, Patrick was gone, his boot still by the door, his wallet on the counter, his car in the drive, but his bed unslept in. The sheets lay flat and cold, dust scattered across them like ash. The smell was stronger there. The sour tang of rot and iron clung to the walls. One thing was missing. His lighter. The old silver one he never let out of his pocket, worn smooth from years in his palm. When I cracked the window to air it out, the stench didn't fade. It thickened. That afternoon I pressed my ear to the door again, and I heard him. Lena, Patrick's voice faint, wet, dragged thin. Help me, please. My fist pounded against the door. Upstairs, my mother screamed for me to stop, her voice breaking. But Patrick's voice was fading, sinking. Help me. Silence. I broke then. I don't remember choosing. Only the hammer's weight in my hand, the clang as I brought it down. The splintering wood. The latch tore free. The door shuddered open, and darkness poured out. Not absence of light, but a physical blackness that consumed it. The bulb overhead flickered, shrieked, died. The air rolled out thick with iron. It moved. Shapes bent inside it, outlines too long, limbs at angles that scalded my eyes, faces blurred like wet paper. I couldn't fix on them because the sound came first, a chorus, Patrick's scream, raw and wild. My father's rasp, broken by pain. My mother's prayer, thin and desperate. And my own voice, Elena. The sound hit harder than sight. Voices shredding against each other, layered and torn, all stretched across a throat too wide, too deep. It wasn't speaking. It was being. I dropped the hammer. My legs buckled, I ran, the stairs blurred. The front door slammed. Gravel shredded my feet. I didn't feel it. Behind me, the farmhouse groaned as if exhaling. I didn't stop until Casey's neon sign burned pink in the dawn. I collapsed in the parking lot, soles bleeding, throat raw from screaming. Even with my hands over my ears, I could still hear my voice echoing out of that blackness. I don't remember walking into the diner. One moment I was collapsed on the asphalt, lungs burning, blood smeared across my feet. The next I was inside, sitting in a booth, trembling over a paper cup of water. Jenny hovered above me, frown deepening as she took in the state I was in. Elena, what happened? Did someone hurt you? I couldn't answer. My tongue felt swollen, my lips numb. I shook my head. She glanced down at my feet. Blood had spread into dark half-moons across the linoleum. Jesus, she whispered. We need to get you to urgent care. No, I rasped. Her frown deepened. She only pressed her lips together and fetched the first aid kit, silently tending my wounds. My hands shook uncontrollably. All around me, the diner hummed, the coffee machine hissed, ceiling fan ticking. But in that hiss, I thought I heard my name. Elena. By sunrise, I insisted I was fine. I tripped, I said, voice brittle. I'm fine. Jenny didn't believe me, but she let it go. Walking home that morning, the farmhouse loomed at the end of the street, its crooked roof line cutting into the pale sky. My stomach turned. The upstairs light burned. It hadn't been on when I left. I should have turned back. I didn't. The house was silent, oppressive. Dust coated the kitchen counters in fine layers, faintly glinting like ash. The smell of iron and sour wood filled my nose. Mom? I whispered, no answer. I climbed the stairs. Banister creaked under my trembling hands. The hallway stretched narrow, long, familiar, and hostile. Her bedroom door stood open. The bed was made, untouched. A nightgown hung limp on a hook. But on the floor lay her rosary beads. Scattered as if torn apart in a hurry, she was gone. That night I packed a bag, stuffed clothes, grabbed keys. I drove until the fuel light blinked and checked into a small roadside motel. The room smelled faintly of mildew and old carpet. I left the TV on low to mask the silence, but even that didn't stop it. At 3:12 a.m., the motel phone rang. I leapt out of bed. Red digits glared at me. The ringing sliced the quiet. I picked up static. Beneath it, voices. My father's rasp, Patrick's shout, my mother's prayers and mine. Elena. I dropped the receiver. The bass thudded against the counter. My breath shuddered in my chest. I didn't sleep after that. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment. Worked extra shifts at the diner. Tried to bury the farmhouse in memory. Tried to convince myself it was gone. It wasn't. Dust still settled in my coffee mug even when sealed. The sour metallic scent clung to my uniform. My coworkers wrinkled their noses at me. Jenny cornered me one night. "Elena, you need help." Your pale coughing zoned out all the time. "This isn't normal." "I'm fine," I lied, but I wasn't. The knocking continued, always faint, always deliberate. Storage room, refrigerator door, the ceiling above me, always in the distance, just enough to set my teeth on edge. Sometimes a breeze brushed the nape of my neck like breath. One night, the diner payphone rang. Nobody used it, yet the sound cut through the hum of the night. I walked toward it. Air grew heavy, metallic iron-laced. The coffee machine hissed low and sharp, and I heard my name in the hiss. My hand hovered over the receiver. I recoiled. Jenny raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" I nodded, shaking too violently to convince even myself. Days blurred. Sleep became impossible. The dreams returned. I was back in the hallway. Wallpaper curling, the light flickering overhead. The door swelled as if breathing. Sometimes I opened it in dreams. The blackness poured out, swallowing the world. And all I felt was sound. A chorus of every voice I had ever loved, shredded and stretched. Other times I dreamed I was inside it. Only sound existed. My voice blended with theirs until I could no longer distinguish myself. I woke choking on iron. Jenny called me again one morning. "I tried your mom." Nobody answered. "You should check on her," I whispered. "She's gone." Jenny's eyes narrowed. Gone where? I couldn't explain. The diner became my life. Fluorescent light and stainless steel my protective armor. The blackness didn't find me there, or so I thought. At 3:12 a.m., the payphone rang. Always, I never answered until one night. The diner was empty. Booths wiped clean, coffee machine humming steady. The air thickened, tang of iron creeping under my skin. My hand moved before my mind could protest. I lifted the receiver, static then voices. My father Patrick, my mother. And then silence. Until one voice sliced through. Mine. "Elena, you left me." I froze. The sound tore, collapsed in on itself, stretched across my skull like a physical weight. The lights flickered. The coffee machine hissed. Dust swirled at my feet. I dropped the receiver. It swung, hitting the wall with a dull thud. The scream lingered, not from the phone, but inside my head. I stumbled into the parking lot. Asphalt wet from rain, reflection staring back at me from the glass, but it wasn't just mine. Behind me, blurred and shifting, a figure. Long, bent wrong, faceless, wet. I turned. Nothing. The air grew heavier. The sour iron scent thickened. I don't go home. The farmhouse remains. Upstairs light burns every night. Neighbors say it's abandoned, but shadows move. At the diner, the payphone rings at 3:12 a.m. every night. I never answer. Sometimes when the coffee machine hisses, I hear it whisper my name. And when the air grows thick and the metallic tang creeps in, I know it's there, waiting. Because promises don't keep things out. They just teach patience. I was 31 when I found the locked trunk in my mother's attic. The storm had been steady all day. November rain hammering the roof like nails, bleeding down the gutters in black streams. The Caldwell house smelled the same as always. Bleach from my mother's endless cleaning, rust thick in the pipes, and cedar that had long since soured into rot. That night, the air pressed heavy, like the house itself was bracing against something. I had gone up to help her make space, as she put it. though she never told me for what. I expected boxes of Christmas lights, old quilts, things she should have thrown out years ago. Instead, in the farthest corner, half hidden beneath a mildewed blanket, I saw it. A trunk. Iron-banded, heavy, its lock dull with rust. The kind of trunk that belonged in stories, not in real attics. I crouched, breath fogging in the dim light, and touched the cold metal. It felt like it had been waiting for me. I should have turned away, but instead I wedged a screwdriver into the lock and pried until it screamed open. The lid moaned like it hated me for it. Inside, the air was sharp and metallic. Photographs. Dozens. Children in backyards, on porches, standing in groups. Every face had been cut out. Jagged gaps where eyes and mouth should have been. Beneath the stack, a man's watch streaked with dried brown. At the bottom, a pair of small shoes, scuffed leather, the letter M carved into the sole. I carried them downstairs. My hands shook so hard the photos almost slipped through my fingers. My mother was drying dishes at the sink. When she turned, her face drained so fast I thought she'd collapse. The plate shattered in the basin. Her lips trembled, her voice a rasp I'd never heard before. "You swore it was gone. You promised me you'd burn it." The next morning, rain still falling, I woke to tires crunching on gravel. Uncle Frank stood on the porch, dripping wet, boots muddy. He hadn't set foot in that house since my father's funeral. Yet here he was, knocking once before stepping inside, as if invited by something deeper than us. He barely looked at me. His eyes went straight to the trunk in the corner of the kitchen. My mother refused to leave her room. Frank leaned close, his breath sour with tobacco and rain. His whisper scraped across my ear. "He's still down there, Aaron. That's what you'll find if you keep pushing." I froze. My skin prickled. That night, lying in my childhood room, the sound began. Scratching. Slow, deliberate, beneath the floorboards. Alex came by on Friday. My boyfriend, calm, rational, always steady. He sat with me while I told him everything. The trunk, my mother, Frank, the sounds. He brushed my hair back, kissed my forehead like I was fragile. "Old houses creak," he said. "Pipes settle. People say strange things when they're drowning in grief." But then, as we sat in silence, it came. A voice. Soft. Childlike. Drawn out. From the basement door, "Eat, Rin." Alex froze. His eyes locked on mine, wide, terrified. For a long, stifling moment, neither of us moved. Finally, he forced himself to stand. His voice cracked, desperate, brittle. It must have been the vents, Aaron. There's no other explanation." But his hands shook so badly, tea spilled down his shirt. He didn't stay. He never came back. The days blurred. I woke with dirt beneath my fingernails. My dreams reeked of damp soil, pressing against my lungs until I clawed myself awake. One morning, the family Bible appeared on the counter. I hadn't touched it in years. A passage underlined in my father's careful hand glared up. "The child will be known by the earth, and the earth will not forget." Not scripture. Not anything I'd ever read before in the mirrors. God, every time I looked, she was there. A girl with wet hair clinging to her face, eyes hollow, lips moving though no sound came. I stopped looking, but reflections caught me anyway. The night I opened the basement, my flashlight shook so hard its beam jittered across the stairs. The air thickened with rot and rust. At the bottom, a mound of earth, freshly disturbed. A shoe jutted out. The twin to the one from the trunk. Scratched into the dirt beside it, MC, my father's initials. When I reached for the shoe, the soil shifted. A hand shot up, pale and smooth, curling around my wrist. Small, child-sized, intact, as though it had never known decay. The flashlight fell, beam careening across the wall. Dozens of photographs nailed in rows. Children's faces cut away, edges bleeding into the stone as though absorbed. From upstairs, my mother screamed, "Close it. Close it before he comes through." I tore free, bolted up the stairs, slammed the door. Barefoot, I ran into the storm. Neighbors staring as I screamed down the street. The house behind me thrumming like a living thing. That was 6 months ago. Now I live in a one-bedroom in Raleigh. Beige carpet, paper-thin walls, traffic hum outside. I leave the lights on. It doesn't help. The pipes knock at night. Not randomly, but steady as though tapped by small fingers. The smell creeps back. Bleach. Rust, wet cedar. And the mirrors fog even when the air is cold. The first time it happened, I jolted awake at 3:07 a.m. The smell hit me hard. The bathroom mirror was already fogged. a single letter etched into condensation. I scrubbed it away. By morning it returned, work suffered. My hands trembled while holding dental tools, my focus drifting. Patients noticed. My boss told me to rest, but how could I tell them the truth? That the past had followed me here, that the basement had found me. I tried therapy. Half-truths spilled out. Childhood trauma, unresolved grief. The counselor nodded. Soft voice, lavender room. But grounding techniques don't matter when dirt appears under your nails while you sleep. I never went back. One night, the air in my bedroom thickened, damp and metallic. I heard footsteps cross the carpet toward my bed. I turned on the lamp. No one stood there. But the fibers of the carpet glistened dark, wet, as if someone had walked barefoot from a grave. The Bible appeared again. This time, a new line underlined in the same neat hand. The blood of the little one will speak though the mouth is shut. Fresh ink, as though written moments before. I burned the page over the sink. The smoke smelled of earth. One evening I came home and stopped cold. The trunk sat in the middle of my living room, closed, locked. From inside, scratching. I ran. Stayed in a motel 2 nights. When I returned, it was gone, but the smell stayed. My neighbor Lewis knocked once when he heard me screaming. He saw the Bible, the fogged mirror, the dripping letter. He asked if I was safe, if I needed help. I wanted to tell him everything. But then down the hall I saw her, the girl. Wet hair plastered, hollow eyes, arm raised, pointing at me. I slammed the door. The haunting grew bolder. Lights flickered. Faucets ran red with water that smelled of pennies. Every clock stopped at 3:07 a.m., the exact moment I first heard my name whispered in the house. The voices grew clearer. You promised. You swore. MC, sometimes sobbing. Small, muffled. The last night began in silence. Too deep, too absolute. The air pressed heavy, thick with the Caldwell stench. The bathroom mirror was already fogged. The letter M ran in streaks, dripping. My reflection blinked, but I hadn't. The girl stood behind me, hand on my shoulder. I turned. No one there. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps on the door. I crept forward, carpet squishing as though soaked, my throat filled with rust. When I pressed my ear to the wood, the whisper came, "He's waiting." My hand moved without me. I turned the knob. The door swung open. The hallway was gone. The basement stretched out instead. Stairs descending. Mound of earth pulsing below. I stepped forward, barefoot. The door slammed shut behind me. The soil shifted. A hand broke through again, gripping mine, colder this time. The initials glowed faintly in the dirt. MC, my father's voice echoed, low and final. The earth remembers. The soil pulled. Cold, unyielding, filling my mouth with dirt. My mother's voice rose from memory, broken and frantic. You swore it was gone. You promised me you'd burn it, and now I knew why. Because promises don't die. They wait. I woke sprawled on my apartment floor. The door closed. The carpet clean, but the smell lingered. The Bible sat open to a blank page. Fresh ink scrawled across it. You are the keeper now. From the bathroom, muffled, came the knock. 3 soft raps, and the whisper, "You promised." I was 27 when I returned to the house I swore I'd never step into again. The drive from Boston had been clear. No traffic, no excuses. Yet as soon as I turned onto Ashwood Lane, the weight inside my chest grew unbearable, like the street itself was squeezing me back into childhood. The collapsing Victorian leaned at the end, swallowed in dead ivy, windows half closed like tired eyes. The will had left it to me. I should have sold it sight unseen, but instead I came, convincing myself I'd only box up my mother's belongings and leave before the first frost. The moment I opened the gate, though, the smell rolled out. Lavender polish soured by mildew, like perfume poured over something that should have stayed buried. Inside, dust clung to every surface. Pale light fought its way through browned lace curtains. The dining table was still set, forks aligned beside chipped plates. A photograph of my father, stiff in his uniform, crooked on the mantel. His smile narrow, unreadable. Mark arrived just before dusk, tall, broad, and restless. "You sure you want to do this alone, Rach?" "I'm fine," I lied. We worked in silence, boxing magazines, folding linens brittle with age. But the house didn't stay quiet. A dragging sound crawled across the attic floor above us, heavy and deliberate. "Rats," Mark muttered, though his shoulders stayed tight. That evening, Aunt Teresa appeared, half-empty bottle in hand, and dropped herself into Mother's recliner. "He kept things up there, you know." "What things?" I asked, her mouth tightened. "That was your mother's sin, not mine." "Teresa, don't stay here longer than you have to," she snapped, sloshing her drink. Some doors never stay closed. That night I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Around 3, a faint lullaby drifted through the vent, thin, high off-key. "Hush now. Hush now." My skin prickled cold. In the morning I tried to make a joke. "The house sings," I told Mark. He didn't laugh. By afternoon, we climbed into the attic. The heat was suffocating, air heavy with dust. Boxes leaned precariously, labels blurred by damp. In the far corner sat a trunk, black and heavy, brass lock dull with age. "That thing's been up here forever," Mark said. "Your mom never let anyone near it." I crouched, fingertips grazing the lock. A memory hit, Mother snapping at me as a child. "That is not yours to touch." Mark tugged the lock. "We could break it." "Not now," I said, sharper than I meant. "We left it." But that evening, I noticed claw-like scratches on the upstairs closet door frame. Fresh splinters curled outward. My stomach lurched. I called Teresa. "What happened in this house?" Her voice was thin. "Don't dig, Rachel. Don't you dare." Then the line went dead. The next night, 3 knocks woke me, sharp, deliberate, against the closet door. I froze, blanket clutched tight. The silence after pressed even heavier. By morning, Mark was gone. His truck vanished from the driveway, no explanation. Dusk fell. The lullaby returned, weaving through the vents like smoke. Louder now, a woman's voice, fragile, uncertain. I followed it to the attic door, pressing my ear against the wood. The tune bled into whispers, words I couldn't catch. 2 days later, Teresa came again. She looked worse, lipstick smeared, blouse misbuttoned. She paced the living room, flask in hand. "You opened it, didn't you?" she demanded. "The trunk?" "No." "Good. Burn it if you have to. That's what your mother should have done." "Why?" Her eyes were bloodshot. "You don't want to know." God help me, I wish I didn't. That night I dreamed of the trunk split open, Polaroids spilling like bones. A camera flash, children crying, my own face caught in the light. I woke with blood beneath my nails. I had clawed my headboard raw, I couldn't resist anymore. At dawn I carried a hammer to the attic. The trunk crouched in its corner waiting. 3 blows shattered the lock. The smell erupted, sweet rot layered with old perfume. I gagged, pressing a sleeve to my nose. Inside, children's clothes folded too carefully. Shoes lined like an inventory. At the bottom, Polaroids, a boy, dirt on his cheeks. A girl with braids crying. More and more. And then me. 4 years old, clutching a rabbit I no longer owned. A shadow behind me, long and unmistakably male. The photo slipped from my hands. Something shuffled across the attic floor, bare feet against wood. I spun, phone light trembling. The corner wavered with movement, small, crouched, too quick to focus. My throat closed. The hammer dropped from my grip. I bolted down the stairs into the kitchen, gasping against the counter. The silence after was worse than sound. That night the lullaby returned not from the vents but from the closet. "Hush now. Hush now." Sweet coaxing. And then, "Come play." I didn't sleep. Morning brought the smell of iron, sharp and metallic. Blood. It drew me back to the attic. The Polaroids lay scattered, but something new waited. A pair of children's shoes, clean, polished, tied neatly, placed outside the trunk. My phone rang. Relief surged when I saw Teresa's name. But when I answered, the voice was not hers. "You remember, Rachel?" My knees gave. The voice was my father's. "You promised not to tell." The line cut. I staggered downstairs, tried the front door. The knob turned, the lock rattled, but it wouldn't open. Not stuck, sealed. The air pressed heavy. Lavender and mildew thick enough to choke. The house wanted me. That night I sat in the hall, hammer across my lap, eyes fixed on the closet door. At midnight, 3 knocks shook it. I rose. My breath came shallow. No words this time. I gripped the knob and yanked it open. The dark inside was deeper than it should have been, a tunnel swallowing the phone's weak beam. The smell was unbearable, rot and perfume fused. Then faces emerged. Children pressed shoulder to shoulder, pale and whispering in unison. The lullaby rippled from their mouths. hollow and breathless. Their clothes hung small, tattered, recognizable from the trunk. Behind them rose a shadow. My father. Not the man in uniform, not the photo on the mantel. His figure stretched wrong, uniform ripped at the seams, body broken into jagged lines. His face slack, eyes void. "You promised, Rachel." The children's chorus rose. "Stay, stay, stay." Cold wrapped my arms, dragging me forward. I swung the hammer wildly, striking air that felt solid. The shadow lunged closer. I tore free, stumbling for the stairs. Photographs crashed from the walls, glass shattering around me. The house shook with the chant. I hurled myself at the front door. Once, twice. On the third slam, it yawned open. I spilled onto the porch, autumn wind slicing the sweat on my skin. Behind me, the house stood silent, closet closed again, waiting. I ran until the road blurred. I don't remember the miles between the house and the hospital. I remember running barefoot down cracked sidewalks the way the streetlights swayed above me. How every shadow at the corner of my eyes stretched too long. I remember the screech of tires when a car nearly clipped me, the driver's horn blaring, the woman's voice asking if I was okay. She bundled me in her coat and drove me to the ER. Under the fluorescent lights, the world felt too sharp, too clean. Nurses whispered as they bandaged my arms, tracing the deep purple marks that circled my skin like fingerprints. They asked what had happened. I told them I fell, that I didn't need the police because how could I say it out loud? How do you tell strangers your dead father is still in your house, calling children to him through the walls? I barely slept that night. The thin hospital blanket pulled to my chin, every creak in the building pulling me back into the closet. I told myself it was over, that I had escaped. But the smell clung to me, lavender gone sour, threaded into my hair and clothes no matter how many times I scrubbed my skin. Mark arrived in the morning. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, face pale, stubble across his jaw. He sat beside my bed, hands clasped tight. "Why didn't you call me?" His voice cracked, a mixture of anger and worry. I stared at the floor tiles. You wouldn't have believed me. Try me, so I told him. The trunk, the Polaroids, the closet, my father's voice. I kept my eyes on the blanket as I spoke, waiting for the disbelief, the laugh, the gentle suggestion that I was losing it. But Mark didn't laugh. His jaw clenched, his hand tightening into a fist on his knee. When I finished, his silence stretched so long it felt unbearable. Then he said, low and broken, "I heard him too." I snapped my head up. "What? Last week?" "When I stayed late at the house. I thought you were asleep. I was in the kitchen when it came through the vent." Uncle Paul's voice. He said my name. His throat worked, and for a moment he couldn't speak. Then, he was talking about that girl, the one who disappeared 10 years ago, the neighbor's kid. I thought I imagined it. But I didn't. The room tilted around me. His words pressed reality into place like nails through wood. It wasn't just me. It wasn't madness. The house carried voices not only of the dead but of the lost, the taken. Mark covered his face with his hands. Our family knew. They had to. Why else would your mom keep that trunk? Why else would Teresa drink herself blind? I couldn't answer. The weight of it smothered the sterile air between us. My father, the officer who'd sworn to protect, had been something else entirely. And the house had kept his sins alive. After I was discharged, I didn't return to Ashwood Lane. The town boarded the house, citing structural hazards. Plywood covered the windows, chains across the door. On paper, it was just another condemned property. But I knew better. Condemned didn't mean empty. I rented an apartment 2 towns over, a second-floor unit above a laundromat. The walls were thin. The air always smelled faintly of detergent, but it was mine. I thought I could start over. The first week, I slept with the lights on. Each morning, I checked the mirror, half expecting to see that crouched figure from the attic reflected behind me. But it was just me, tired, pale, alive. Then the scratches began. At first, shallow lines on my front door, as if someone had dragged a key across the paint. The landlord blamed neighborhood kids. But the scratches grew deeper each day, jagged grooves digging into the wood in uneven bursts. One morning I woke to find them inside, carved along the bedroom doorframe. My throat went dry. I hadn't heard a sound in the night. I called Mark. My voice shook as I told him. He went quiet for a long time before whispering, "It followed us." I laughed then, sharp and broken. Don't say that. You know it's true. A week later, he stopped answering my calls. His voicemail was full. I drove past his apartment once just to see. His truck was in the lot, door ajar, keys dangling in the ignition. But the windows of his unit were dark. I didn't go inside. That night, I woke at 3:07 a.m. to the sound of humming. Not through vents this time. Not through walls. From the foot of my bed I didn't look at first. I couldn't. The tune wrapped around me, the same lullaby, every note pitched wrong. My body shook so hard the mattress quivered. When I finally forced my eyes open, the room was empty, but the smell lingered. Lavender, sour and wrong. I moved a mirror into storage, convinced I didn't want to risk reflections. But the bathroom held one I couldn't cover. And sometimes, when I moved too quickly, I caught glimpses that didn't match. Me at 4 years old, cheeks streaked with tears, clutching the stuffed rabbit. Behind me, a figure in uniform, his body stretched and broken, waiting. The doctors call it trauma. Flashbacks. I nod. I let them think I'm getting better. But the truth is sharper. Every night the scratches deepen. Every morning the grooves on the doorframe are fresh, as if small hands worked all night. Sometimes I swear I hear them laughing. I don't go near closets anymore. I keep them shut, taped, blocked with furniture. Still, I wake to the sound of 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. And when I close my eyes, I hear the chorus rising again, the voices of children pressed together, whispering in unison, "Stay, stay, stay." I thought leaving the house meant escape, but I carry it now. In my skin, in my breath, in the grooves that appear no matter where I live. The shadow hasn't moved. It waits, and I know one night soon it will open the door. I was 32 when I returned to my childhood home for the first time in 14 years. Rain lashed against my windshield in relentless sheets, smearing the world into gray streaks. My wipers groaned in protest as I turned into the cul-de-sac, the tires slicing through flooded asphalt. At the end of the street stood the house, white siding dulled to a sickly gray, shutters sagging, porch light sputtering like a failing heartbeat. It hadn't changed, not really, but it had the posture of something waiting for me. Even from the car I could smell the earth, wet soil and worms rising after rain, sharp and metallic. The scent wrapped around me thick with memory. I turned off the ignition but didn't move, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. My mother's sudden death had forced me back, but the truth was, the house itself had been pulling me long before the call. The porch swing creaked in the wind. It moved too rhythmically, chains groaning like a pendulum. Though no one sat there, my stomach tightened. I forced myself out, the storm soaking me instantly, suitcase wheels dragging through puddles. The front door opened before I reached it. "Marissa," David said. My younger brother leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. His hair had gone gray at the temples, though he was only 30. His eyes searched mine the way a guard searches a prisoner, wary, suspicious. "You made it," I swallowed. "Flight was late. Weather didn't help." "Yeah." His tone was clipped. He stepped aside. "Come in." The smell hit first. Lemon cleaner undercut with mildew and something faintly sweet. My mother's perfume lingering like she'd just walked through. I froze in the entryway, remembering her soft hums in the kitchen, the way she always touched my cheek when she passed. But it wasn't her voice I heard now. It was Aunt Sylvia standing at the sink. Her hands shook as she scrubbed the same glass under running water, whispering, "Some doors should never be opened." She didn't look up. Her words bled into the hiss of the faucet. David's jaw tightened. "She's been like that all week." "Don't listen." I set my suitcase by the stairs. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe the walls had inched closer over the years, shrinking the air into something suffocating. We sat at the dining table. The chandelier above buzzed, one bulb flickering so the room shifted between light and shadow. "You shouldn't stay long," David said, folding his arms. "We'll sort Mom's things, handle the paperwork. Then you should go back." "Back?" I frowned. This was my home too. He leaned closer, voice low, urgent. "Don't go in the basement, Marissa. Promise me." The air stilled. Rain against the windows seemed to hush, waiting for my answer. "I won't," I said, though my throat caught on the lie. That first night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The portraits on the walls hung crooked, gazes slanted, pupils too dark. Lavender curtains swayed through the windows were sealed. My mother's perfume drifted through, cloying and sweet as if she were pacing the hall. At midnight I heard laughter. High, sharp, childlike. It darted through the house, quick as a flash, then vanished. I sat up, heart hammering. The hall was empty. By morning I convinced myself it was a dream. While sorting my mother's things, I found the letters. They were tucked beneath sweaters in her dresser, each envelope sealed, each addressed to me. My hand trembled as I tore one open. The handwriting inside was unmistakable. Mine, April 8th, 2023. You'll argue with David in the dining room. He'll say it's your fault she's dead. Don't let him see you cry. I froze. The date was tomorrow. I opened another. The basement door will rattle at night. Don't open it, and another. The room we buried is waiting. You always knew. The words crawled under my skin. I stuffed them back into the drawer, heart racing, refusing to believe. That night, the dream came. My father sat at the foot of my bed. His shirt was stained, his fingernails thick with soil, the stench of earth suffocating me. His eyes gleamed in the dark. You promised you'd never tell, Marissa. You remember hiding the first one? I woke gasping, sweat slick on my skin, nails clawing at the sheets. But when I lifted my hand, dirt streaked my palm. Damp. Real. The argument came as the letter predicted. David slammed his fist against the table. You weren't here. You left me to deal with everything. You think you can just walk back in like nothing happened? That's not fair. My voice cracked. I had to leave. You know what it was like, Dad, the fights? He leaned close, spittle hitting the wood. She's dead because of you. You knew what was in this house. You knew what we promised. The chandelier rattled above us. My mouth opened, but Sylvia's whisper cut in from the kitchen. Some doors should never be opened. David's face hardened. He stormed out, leaving me shaking, the prophecy fulfilled. That night, the basement door rattled. The knob twitched in its socket, wood groaning as if something pressed from the other side. My feet carried me closer against my will. Damp earth bled through the crack at the bottom, sharp and suffocating. My hand hovered over the knob. Don't. Sylvia stood in the hall, pale as wax. Her nightgown clung to her thin frame. Tears streaked her face. Please, Marissa. Some doors should never be opened. Her words broke into a sob as she turned away, vanishing down the hall. The rattling ceased. Silence closed in, and then I heard it. Light footsteps, children running beneath me, circling in the dark. Morning came gray and heavy, the rain still falling in slow, steady sheets. I searched the kitchen, but Aunt Sylvia was gone. Her coat was missing from its hook, her shoes from the mat. David sat alone at the table, staring into his coffee like it might tell him the future. His knuckles were raw, scraped and swollen. Where's Sylvia? I asked. He didn't look up. She left. Left where? Doesn't matter. His voice was flat. She couldn't handle it. I wanted to push, but something in his posture warned me off. He wasn't going to explain. By noon, I couldn't resist. The letters called to me like magnets. I tore open more envelopes, my hands shaking. April 10th, 2023. David will tell you the truth, but you won't believe him until you see the shoes. April 11th. The pit will still be fresh. It's waiting for you. My throat closed. The words weren't warnings. They were instructions. That evening, I found David in the living room, the TV muted, the glow painting his face sickly. You knew about the letters, I said. His eyes flicked up sharp. What letters? The ones in Mom's dresser, written in my handwriting. They describe things before they happen. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Then you already know. Know what? That it's your turn. I felt the words like a physical blow. My turn for what? He leaned forward, his voice raw. Dad made us promise. After the first one. We buried it together, remember? You helped him. You promised you'd never tell. I staggered back, shaking my head. I was a child. You saw. His voice cracked. You know what's down there. Memories clawed at the edges of my mind. The smell of wet earth, my father's hand on my shoulder, the sound of muffled crying in the dark. "No," I whispered, but my body trembled with recognition. That night my father came again in a dream. He sat closer, his fingernails black with dirt, the smell suffocating. His eyes were bottomless voids. "You promised you'd never tell, Marissa. You remember hiding the first one." He reached for my hand, pressing damp soil into my palm. I woke gasping, and in the faint light of dawn I saw it. Dirt smeared across my skin, clinging beneath my nails. I scrubbed until my hands bled, but the smell lingered. On April 10th, David broke. He sat hunched in the armchair, eyes hollow. "It started with Dad," he whispered. "He brought them here, said no one would find them. Just kids, Marissa, always kids. He did things. We never saw, not all of it. Just the shoes afterward. Always the shoes." My stomach lurched. "You're lying." I wish I was. When he died, Mom took it on. She said the house needed it. Said if we didn't feed it secrets, it would take us instead. "You can't expect me to go downstairs," he said, voice breaking. "Then tell me I'm lying." Midnight. The basement door loomed at the end of the hall. My hand shook as I turned the knob. The hinges screamed, the smell of rot and damp soil rushing up to meet me. I descended slowly. Each step groaned like a warning. The bulb above buzzed weakly, spilling fractured yellow across the basement. Shoes lined the walls. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Tiny sneakers caked in mud. Scuffed Mary Janes, boots with broken laces. Some streaked with something darker, dried into the leather. In the center, a pit. The earth freshly turned, wet with rainwater. A shovel leaned against the wall, its blade smeared dark. My knees buckled. Behind me, David's voice cracked. "It's your turn now. You promised." I spun. He stood in the doorway, shovel trembling in his grip. His face was pale, wet with sweat, his eyes wild. "David, please. You saw what Dad did. You helped bury the first. Don't pretend you don't remember." The memory surged, unstoppable. Me at 8 years old, clutching my father's sleeve as he shoved a small, limp form into the soil. My hands pressing dirt over it. My father whispering, "We never tell, we promise." My stomach turned. "I didn't know, I was a child. You knew enough." David's voice was ragged. "Now it's you." I moved before I could think. I lunged at him, hands closing around the shovel's shaft. His grip slipped, the blade clanging against the concrete. For a moment we struggled, his strength surging with desperation, mine with terror. I wrenched it free and shoved him back. He stumbled against the wall of shoes, rows of them clattering to the ground. His face crumpled. Pain, guilt, resignation all tangled together. I bolted up the stairs, the shovel clattering behind me. My chest heaved as I slammed the front door open. Rain swallowed me whole, cold and merciless. My feet slipped through mud, water splashing my legs as I ran toward the road. I didn't look back until I reached the pavement. There, in the doorway, David stood. His shoulders sagged. The shovel hung loosely in his hands. He didn't chase. He only watched, his face pale and broken. The house loomed behind him, white and silent in the downpour, waiting. Weeks later, I live in a different city, in a small apartment with beige walls and quiet neighbors. Yet I cannot escape. The faint smell of wet earth clings to my skin, an odor only I can detect. No matter how many showers I take, it returns, loamy, damp, suffocating. I find soil scattered where it should not be. On my pillow when I wake, in the cup holding my toothbrush. At the bottom of my wine glass, dark, rich, unmistakable. And at night, as sleep drags me under, a voice curls against my ear. Not my father's, not David's, my own, younger, high and breathless. I promised I'd never tell. I was 28 when I learned the house would not forgive me. My name is Clara Winslow, and until that autumn, I clung to the fragile lie that I'd buried my childhood along with my father's drinking and my mother's sudden disappearance. For years I told myself that silence was survival, that forgetting was healing. But silence rots the same way wood does. It softens, buckles, and collapses when weight presses down. The weight arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was a cool October morning, the kind where the air smells faintly of wood smoke even in town. The letter sat on my small kitchen table in Asheville, its black ink scrawl spelling out an address I had spent over a decade avoiding, Maple Hollow Road. The name throbbed in my chest like a bruise. Inside, the lawyer's words were dry, transactional. My father's estate had finally been released, pending my signature and my brother Daniel's. The house, long abandoned, was ours. I told myself I would drive up, sign papers, and put it on the market. Closure, neat and clinical. But the moment I spoke the address aloud, the syllables tasted of damp cedar, rust, and mothballs. I didn't want to go, but I did. The drive took me west along twisting mountain roads. Rain drizzled against the windshield, streaking the yellow of the trees into watercolor smears. By the time I turned onto Maple Hollow, the light had thinned to that gray shade just before dusk. The house rose at the end of the road like a forgotten monument. 3 stories, peaked gables, a wraparound porch with balusters sagging like broken teeth, paint peeled in strips from the clapboards, revealing wood darkened by years of rot. The windows, once clear, were fogged and blind. It loomed, not just taller than I remembered, but closer, as if the mountain had shifted, leaning the house toward me. Inside, the air struck me at once, a stagnant weight. Not just cedar and mothballs, the old signature smells, but something new. A metallic damp, sharp as pennies pressed against the tongue. The wallpaper sagged in wet patches, puckered like diseased skin. I laid a hand against the wall. It felt warm. I found Daniel in the kitchen. He sat at the counter, spinning a beer bottle between his palms. His dark hair had thinned at the temples, but he still carried himself with that casual arrogance, the way he used to bluff his way through arguments with teachers and cops. "Look at us," he said. "Home again." He tried to smile, but his eyes kept flicking again and again toward the basement door. "You been down there?" I asked. He barked a laugh. "Hell no. Haven't set foot past that door since." His words cut off like a tape chewed in the middle. He cracked open another beer instead. The sound echoed too long in the empty kitchen. She arrived the next morning. Marjorie had always been thin, but now she looked whittled down to nothing but bones and wiry tendons. Her voice was sharp, brittle as glass. "Should have burned this place down years ago," she muttered, clutching her handbag like a shield. She paused at the foot of the stairs, her eyes climbing each riser as if she expected something to crawl down. "Don't linger," she warned. "That house doesn't belong to you." It never did. When I pressed her, belonged to who? She only shook her head and left. The first sign came on the second day. I was halfway down the staircase when I noticed it. A child's shoe, scuffed leather, small enough for a 5-year-old. It sat neatly in the middle step, toes pointing up. I picked it up, expecting dust. The leather was warm. "Daniel," I called. "Did you dig through the attic?" He came from the living room, eyes bleary from another beer. "What?" "The shoe." He blinked at it and shook his head. "Never seen it before." He wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, the rotary phone in the hallway rang. The sound punched straight through me. No one had used that line since before our father died. I lifted the receiver with a trembling hand. "Clara," my father's voice. A rasp, faint but unmistakable. The line went dead. The silence afterward pressed like a hand over my mouth. The next morning, I saw them, scratches on the wall outside my bedroom. Tiny initials carved into the paint over and over. EW, I traced them with my fingertip. The grooves were fresh, the plaster raw. EW, my initials. Or, I swallowed, Eleanor Winslow. My sister's name. A name no one spoke anymore. Sleep offered no relief. I dreamed of my mother, her face as I remembered from the night she left, hair wild, eyes frantic. She pulled at the wallpaper with bloodied fingers, tearing strips away to reveal seams beneath. Her mouth was sewn shut with black thread. Her eyes demanded I remember. When I woke, I tasted dust and iron. By the 4th night, Daniel broke. He came into my room, pale and shaking. His hands twitched as if invisible strings jerked them. "You hear it too, don't you?" he whispered. "The crying?" I hesitated. Yes, he pressed his fist to his forehead. "It's under the floor." Always under. Don't dig, Clara, promise me. Promise you won't dig, but I couldn't promise. The words caught in my throat like splinters. The house began to shift. At first, doors stuck. Not locked, not jammed, just resistant like wood swelling against a humid summer. But the air was dry. On the 5th day, the parlor windows fogged. The fog clung on the inside, warm to the touch. When I wiped my sleeve against it, I saw smudges. Small handprints pressed flat against the glass. The phone lines went dead. Daniel tried the truck. The engine wouldn't turn. He cursed and kicked the tires until his voice cracked. By the 6th night, every exit stuck fast. We were sealed inside. It happened on the 7th day. The smell had grown unbearable. Iron and copper, sharp enough to sting the eyes. The basement door groaned open as if on cue. Daniel stood beside me, trembling. His face was slick with sweat. "Don't," he begged. But I descended. The air grew colder with each step. The dirt floor stretched before me, freshly turned. A mound, damp and dark, the soil breathing faintly as though something beneath shifted. And then, her voice. My mother's, rising through the earth. "You promised to keep her hidden." Daniel screamed. He grabbed the shovel, blocking the stairs, his eyes wild. "You did it! You put her there! It was supposed to be you!" I pushed past him. My fingers dug into the mound. The soil crumbled, cold and wet, and something brittle gave beneath my touch. Bones. Small, curled like roots, a hollow skull, faintly shaped like my own. I don't remember how long I crouched there in the dirt, fingers trembling over the brittle shape. The soil clung under my nails, damp and sticky, reeking of iron. Daniel's voice was a distant roar above me, words broken into fragments. "You, her, always you." The shovel clanged against the wall as he dropped it. His sobs sounded like laughter, high and sharp, the kind that made my stomach turn cold. The mound shivered beneath my hands. A breath exhaled from below. I tore myself free and stumbled up the stairs, past Daniel's heaving body, past the basement door that slammed shut on its own weight. The house sighed. That night, I didn't sleep. Every surface seemed alive. The wallpaper bulged in places, seams puckering like stitched skin. My initials, no, hers, Eleanor's, spread further down the hall, carved in fresh scratches. E-W. I locked my door, but the sound came through anyway, scraping, soft and deliberate, like a child's fingernails tracing letters into wood. I pressed my palms to my ears. The sound grew louder, coming not from the hall, but from inside the walls. "Clara," the whisper said. I wanted to scream, but the breath caught in my throat. Daniel stopped leaving his room. When I knocked, he snapped, "Go away!" Through the door, I heard him muttering. Names, promises, apologies, the scrape of the shovel dragging against the floor. On the second night, I found him standing in the hallway, eyes bloodshot, holding the shovel like a shield. "She's not yours," he whispered. "She was never yours." His hands shook, but his grip on the handle was white-knuckled. "Daniel," I said softly. "Who?" He laughed, a hollow sound. "You don't even remember. That's why it chose you." Then he staggered back into his room, slamming the door. By the 10th day, the food was gone. Daniel refused to leave his room. When I asked if he was hungry, he screamed until the sound broke into sobs. The air grew colder. My breath clouded in the hallway, though no frost touched the windows. At night, I swore I heard chewing, wet, rhythmic, from Daniel's side of the house. I told myself it was my imagination. But the smell that drifted under his door was not food, it was earth. Damp, metallic earth. The outside world was gone. From the upstairs windows, I saw only trees, closer than they should have been, pressing against the glass. The road that had led us here was swallowed by forest. I pounded the glass until my fists ached. Behind me, a giggle echoed down the hallway. I spun. A girl stood at the far end, pale as paper, her hair hanging in wet ropes. She tilted her head, and though her face blurred in shadow, I saw my own eyes staring back. "Eleanor," I whispered. She raised her hand and dragged her fingernails along the wall. The initials bloomed fresh in the plaster, then she vanished. I couldn't resist. The house wanted me back in the basement, and I went like a moth to flame. The door creaked open before I touched it. The smell of copper flooded up. The mound was larger now, pulsing faintly. Roots snaked across the dirt, pale and wet. Daniel crouched beside it, his hands filthy, nails caked with black soil. His face was streaked with tears, his mouth stretched into a grin. "She's awake," he whispered. "She wants you." I backed away.
"Daniel, we need to leave." His laugh was sharp as glass.
"There is no leaving. Not until you take her place." He lunged. The shovel whistled through the air. I ducked, the blade grazing my shoulder. Pain flared hot and sharp. I shoved him back. His body hit the wall, dust raining down. But he came again, swinging wild. We crashed against the mound. The soil split open and the smell was unbearable. Copper, rot, damp wool. I saw the bones clearly now. Small ribs, delicate as bird cages. A skull hollow-eyed, its jaw stretched in a silent scream. And beside it, scraps of cloth I recognized, my childhood dress, faded yellow. Torn, my vision swam. I grabbed the shovel handle, wrenched it free, and shoved Daniel aside. He didn't fight. He crumpled, sobbing. "It should have been you," he choked. "You were the one who promised." The basement door burst open. I ran. Up the stairs, through the hall, past the carved initials that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. The front door gave beneath my hand. I spilled out into the night air, the forest pressing close around the house. Cold, damp wind stung my face. I didn't look back. I ran until my legs buckled, until the road appeared beneath me, until the night swallowed the house whole. Back in my apartment, the silence should have been a comfort. It wasn't. At first I told myself it was memory, phantom echoes, trauma. But then the scratching began. Faint, inside the walls, tiny fingernails tracing letters. EW. The initials spread across the paint in my bedroom, carved as neatly as they had been in the house. At night, the vents whispered. A child's voice, soft and patient. "When will you bring me home?" I stopped denying it. It wasn't my father's secret. Not my mother's, it was mine. The memory unraveled slowly. Each night, pulling another stitch. I remembered the game Daniel and I played when we were small, hiding Eleanor in the crawl space, pretending she was a ghost. I remembered Mother screaming when she couldn't find her, Father too drunk to care. I remembered the silence when we pulled her out, too late, and the promise Daniel made me swear. Never tell. Never dig. I thought I had buried that night, sealed it away in the folds of childhood. But the house hadn't forgotten, and now neither could I. The scratching hasn't stopped. The initials cover every wall. Last night I woke to find soil on my floor, damp red clumped beneath my bed, and when I leaned close to the vent, the voice was clearer than ever. "You promised to keep me hidden." Her breath tickled my ear, and I knew then, with a certainty that hollowed me out. The house hadn't lent her back to me, it had sent her here to stay. I grew up believing our house was ordinary. It wasn't. The first night back, snow stitched itself across the street lamps like thin white scars. My hands shook so badly on the keys that I scraped brass against brass 3 times before the lock caught. The air that exhaled from the house was colder than the night outside. Colder and wrong. The scent struck me immediately. Lavender polish, my mother's signature, but underneath it a metallic tang, coppery, faint, impossible to ignore. The Victorian on Ashwood Lane was never just a house. It had been a mausoleum long before my mother died in December, leaving it to me like a curse wrapped in paper. I am Evelyn Cross, 32, a librarian who spends her life cataloging the stories of others while refusing to catalog her own. I swore I would never return, and yet here I was, dragging a suitcase through the hallway where wallpaper peeled in long, silent strips, like thread pulled from a seam. Every sound clung unnaturally to the air, the scuff of my boots on warped boards, the hiss of a draft winding down the stairwell, the deep tick of the grandfather clock that hadn't been wound in years. The kitchen was the worst. Lavender smothered everything there, layered over that copper scent. My eyes landed on the locked drawer at the base of the counter. Father's drawer. Even as a child, I'd known never to touch it. The key never left the chain around his neck. The memory of his fury when I once tugged on the handle, his grip bruising my arm, flashed with such clarity that I stepped back instinctively. A floorboard groaned overhead. Weight shifted slow, deliberate. I froze, my gaze fixed on the ceiling. The sound crossed the upstairs hallway. Then silence. The faucet dripped once, metallic, tick, tick, tick. I hadn't turned it on. The light above the sink flickered faintly. Humming. I stayed up until dawn. By the second morning, I had unpacked in the smallest bedroom upstairs, the one farthest from the attic door. I pushed the bed against the corner so I could see both the window and door at once. Sleep came only in fragments, restless and shallow. When dreams did take me, they filled with a voice I recognized but should not have heard. My mother's, singing hymns she never sang in life. I woke to the radio beside my bed, whispering static. The smell of lavender pressed thick into my lungs. Then a knock rattled the front door. Daniel. My brother had not aged well. His hair thinned into gray wisps, his skin papery, his posture bent inward as though life had shrunk him. He didn't speak a greeting, only brushed past me into the hall, eyes darting as though tracking something just out of sight. "Get out," he rasped, his gaze fixed upward toward the ceiling. "It wants you to remember." I shut the door against the bitter wind. "This is my house now." His head snapped toward me. "It's not yours. It never was. Don't call it that." For a moment I saw him as he once was, the boy trailing me through summers, knees-skinned, eyes full of stubborn loyalty. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man hollowed by memory. He went straight to the kitchen. His hand hovered over the drawer. "Did you open it?" "No, don't." His eyes flicked to mine, sharp, almost feral. "That's how she gets in." "Who?" His jaw worked. His lips trembled with a word he swallowed back. At last he whispered, "The one you buried." I felt the world tilt. "What are you talking about?" "You don't remember." He laughed then, bitter, empty. He slammed his palm against the drawer, wood rattling. "Of course you don't. She made sure you forgot." My voice was barely sound. "Daniel, promise me." His breath hitched. "Swear you'll never open it." I couldn't. The silence between us gave him my answer. He spun, desperate. Seizing a chair, he hurled it against the drawer. The lock splintered but held. He jammed a screwdriver into the keyhole, twisting until the metal bent. The drawer hummed low, vibrating under his assault, but refused to open. "Damn you," he hissed at it. His eyes brimmed with fury and terror. He staggered toward the door. Before leaving, he shoved the coat rack against it, barring me in. His last futile act of protection. His eyes locked on mine. "Don't let her stitch you shut." Then he disappeared into the snow. By nightfall, the coat rack lay toppled. Daniel never came back. His boots stayed by the door. His coat hung untouched. The house pressed closer. The radio sang when I entered the bedroom. The bathroom mirror reflected not myself, but a younger me, lips sewn shut with thick black thread. My breath fogged the glass. I slammed my fist against it. Pain flared as shards split my skin. Blood spotted the sink. When I looked again, my reflection smiled at me through the cracks. That night, footsteps dragged through the attic for hours, circling. Even with a pillow pressed over my head, I heard them. On the third day, I tried the drawer myself, the screwdriver wedged against the seam. The wood pulsed under my palm, faint and rhythmic like a heartbeat. I dropped the tool, a fragment of memory seared. Father's voice low, warning never to touch it. Mother's hand gripping my shoulder too tight. Daniel's wide eyes, my chest heaved. The house seemed to breathe with me. That night I dreamed again, dirt caked under my fingernails. The taste of iron on my tongue. My mother's hands guiding mine, pressing something thrashing into my arms. The muffled cries of a child. I woke drenched in sweat. My nails were filthy. I stumbled into the bathroom, scrubbing until my fingers burned. The mirror had healed. No cracks, no blood, but the stitched girl still stared back, her lips trembling. "Who are you?" I whispered. The thread twitched as though straining, and then muffled through the glass, I heard her answer. "You buried me." The fourth night, the house gave up all pretense. I woke to music. Not from outside, but from above, drifting from the attic. My mother's voice clear now, singing hymns she never once sang when alive. The words slithered down through the beams, verses about silence, obedience, and sacrifice. The hymn was patient, endless, as if she had always been waiting for me to listen. Barefoot, I crept into the hallway with a flashlight. The beam shook across the walls. Wallpaper peeled in curling strips, thin as thread pulled from a seam. The stairs groaned under my weight, though I had not yet climbed them. The attic door waited at the top. its outline glowing faintly with frost. I laid my hand against it. The wood pulsed, steady like breath. I couldn't open it. I ran instead, slamming my bedroom door, sliding the lock. Pressed against the wood, I listened. The footsteps began again, slow, deliberate, descending from the attic. One by one, dragging weight closer and closer. The hall stayed empty when I dared to check. The house was toying with me, teaching me. Stitch by stitch, it was unseeming what I had buried. Daniel returned the next morning. He looked worse, face gray, lips pale, eyes ringed dark. He grabbed me by the shoulders, shaking me until my teeth clicked. "You hear her, don't you? You see her?" "Daniel, you should be scared." His voice cracked. "Do you know why Father wore the key around his neck? Why he never let us near this drawer?" His hand jabbed toward it, trembling. "Because it's not wood. Not a drawer. It's a mouth, a coffin, a promise." My throat closed. "You're not making sense." "She wants you to remember," he rasped. "That's why you came back. Not because she died. Because she called. She's not finished with you." "Who?" His eyes welled. His lips trembled. At last, a whisper. "The one you buried." The words hollowed me. "You don't remember," he spat. "She made sure you forgot." "But I didn't. I was there too." He seized a chair, swung it into the drawer. Wood splintered but held. He drove a screwdriver into the keyhole, twisting until the metal bent. The drawer hummed, deep and low, vibrating the floor. But it would not open. "Damn you," he hissed. Not at me, but at the house itself. He staggered to the door. Before leaving, he shoved the coat rack against it, barring me in as though from something already inside. His last look burned into me, his voice breaking. "Don't let her stitch you shut." Then he vanished into the snow. By nightfall, the coat rack had toppled itself. Daniel was gone. His coat hung by the door, his boots unmoved. It was as if he had been swallowed whole. After that, the house stopped pretending to be anything but alive. Doors clicked, locked behind me. Windows frosted over from the inside, thick white veins crawling like threads across glass. The faucet dripped, tick, 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 filling the sink with the stain of rust. The radio spoke clearly now. My mother's voice crooned hymns about mute children saved by obedience, about tongues torn out and sewn shut. "Evelyn," she sang through static. "You remember. You always remembered." I pressed my palms to my ears until they burned, but the words threaded through bone. The bathroom mirror gave me back not myself, but her, older now. Lips unstitched. Her mouth moved, eyes wet with accusation. "You buried me." The words struck like a blade. My knees hit the tile. Memory split wide, snow outside. I was 6. My mother's hands guided mine. Something thrashed in my arms. Daniel screamed, "Stop! Please stop!" My father loomed, silent, shadow swallowing the lamp. The drawer yawning open, cloth lining its hollow. My mother's voice in my ear. One child to keep, one to bury. A small body pressed into my grip. A mouth sewn shut, muffled cries leaking through thread. A twin. My face reflected back at me. Teeth, tiny and smooth, pressed into my palm. I woke sprawled on the bathroom floor, sobbing, nails packed with dirt. My breath reeked of iron. The mirror shimmered, whole again. No cracks, no blood. Just her. Always her. I stopped pretending I could leave. The house sealed me in. The whispers followed every step. Stitching imagery bled into everything. Curtains frayed like unraveling hems. Wallpaper dangling like torn seams. Snow weaving itself across the windows until no world remained beyond. I tried the car once more. The road circled endlessly, always leading me back to Ashwood Lane. The snow erased everything but this house, so I returned to the drawer. The lock slid free this time, as if it had been waiting for me. The drawer yawned open with a groan like a throat clearing itself. Cloth bundles lay inside, pulsing faintly as though alive. My hands shook as I unwrapped one. Tiny teeth spilled across the floor, pale and smooth as milk seeds. They clicked against the boards, rolling into corners. The scent of iron swelled until I gagged. At the bottom lay a photograph. I was 6, smiling stiffly, standing beside another child. Her eyes wide, her mouth crudely sewn shut with black thread, puckering her skin into twisted seams. The photograph was the lock. My memory was the key, and the drawer was open. The house convulsed. Beams shuddered, doors slammed, the floor pulsed underfoot. Mirrors showed not one reflection, but two, her and me stitched together, inseparable. Her mouth moved freely now. Over and over, her lips shaped the words, "You buried me." The radio screamed the hymn until the speaker cracked. The faucet gushed rust. The clock hand spun backward. Tick, tick, tick. I collapsed in the parlor, the drawer gaping beside me, teeth scattered like seeds waiting to be planted. My mother's voice filled the house, endless and calm. One child to keep, one to bury. I don't know which one I am. The girl in the mirror smiles. Her lips part. She whispers my name from the hollow of my chest as though she has always lived there. The house breathes with me, waits with me, and I am so very tired of pretending I don't remember. I was 31 when I went back to my mother's house in Hartwell, Georgia on a wet autumn evening, October 19th, 2021, 7:12 p.m. The rain hung heavy over the porch, blurring the wood into water-stained streaks. The screen door slapped once against the frame as I pulled it open, and the smell of stale air met me like a wave. Old wood, mothballs, the faint ghost of cigarettes. I hesitated on the threshold, knowing the odor hadn't changed in a decade. And in that instant, it was like time hadn't passed. I stepped inside. My shoes squeaked across warped planks. The living room sagged around me with its floral couch and leaning shelves. I caught myself glancing toward the hallway where the basement door waited, its crooked latch broken, a faint draft curling out from underneath. My chest tightened, though I didn't know why. My name is Clara Hensley. I teach 3rd grade at Hartwell Elementary, just a mile down Benson Street. I left this house 12 years ago. I left my younger brother Ethan too. I told myself I had no choice then, but standing here now surrounded by the weight of the place, it felt like a betrayal I'd carried into adulthood. Ethan hadn't looked at me during the funeral. He kept his eyes on the hymnal, his jaw set. When I tried to speak to him, he walked away. I told myself he was grieving differently, but the way he ignored me wasn't grief. It was indictment. I pulled my damp coat tighter, the air cooler than it should have been. On the mantel, family photos leaned against one another, warped in their frames. I picked up one of Ethan and me as kids, sparklers in our hands. His smile was wide, unguarded. Mine was thin, my eyes elsewhere. I set it back down quickly, my fingertips damp with dust. A knock startled me. I opened the door to find Aunt Marjorie beneath a clear plastic rain hood, water beating down her cheeks. "You came," I said, stepping aside. She slipped in, shaking off rain. Her eyes scanned the room with quick, darting glances as if the house itself were watching her. "Still feels the same," she murmured. I forced a smile. "I thought I'd start tonight. Just a few boxes." Her eyes lingered on the hall leading toward the basement. She pressed her lips together, then said, "Your mother. She liked to keep things. Not everything was worth keeping." I frowned. "I know, that's why I'm here. To sort through." Her hand touched my arm briefly. "Don't dig too deep, Clara. Some things settle best where they are." Her tone was light, almost casual, but her gaze was fixed. She gave me a hug that was quick and perfunctory, then left with her umbrella bobbing against the rain. The screen door clicked shut. I was alone again. The hours passed in silence, broken only by the rain. I filled one box with brittle magazines, another with dishes. I heated soup on the stove, but hardly touched it. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. By 9, I pulled a blanket around my shoulders on the couch. Sleep came shallow, and then the dream came. My mother's voice whispered close to my ear. "Clara, come down." Her tone was coaxing, the way it always had been when she wanted a confession. The sound of dripping water echoed behind her words like a faucet left running. I jerked awake. My heart pounded. The living room was dark except for the glow of the streetlight outside. Then I saw it. A pale strip of light bleeding from under the basement door. The bulb down there should have been dead years ago. I rose, blanket falling away. My bare feet pressed against the cold floorboards as I crept closer. The air smelled faintly metallic like wet iron. A floorboard creaked above me. "Ethan?" My voice was tentative. He stood at the top of the stairs, a shadow against the dim hall light. His face was pale, eyes too wide. "You remember what she made us do?" he said softly. The words sent a chill through me. "What are you talking about?" "You were there." His gaze didn't move, didn't blink. "You always were." I opened my mouth, but no words came. A silence stretched long between us. Then he turned and walked down the hall without another word. I sat awake the rest of the night, eyes fixed on the door until dawn. The next day, I told myself it was exhaustion, a bad dream. I kept busy with boxes, but by noon I couldn't resist. I pulled the basement door open. The draft met me again, cooler, damp with soil. The steps groaned beneath me. Shadows clung to corners. Boxes rose like crooked tombstones, their sides buckling from moisture. My mother's handwriting scrawled across the lids. Winter coats, Misk, Xmas. I pulled one open. Newspapers brittle with age. Beneath them a small shoe, mud clinging to the seams. Not just mud. I turned it over. A sharp red clay, the kind that only came from the far side of Lake Hartwell, where the ground bled color into everything. Inside the heel, scratched faintly, was an initial. A D. The air thickened. Another box held a lock of hair tied with faded ribbon, strands dark and brittle. My throat tightened, but I dropped it quickly, the ribbon snapping apart as it fell. The last box was heavier. I pried open its warped lid. A cracked photograph lay on top. A boy's face stared back, no, should have. The eyes were gouged out with something sharp, the paper torn away. His shirt bore a small stitched emblem, the same D. My stomach turned. The floor above groaned. I froze, the photo trembling in my hand. Ethan's footsteps descended, slow and heavy. He appeared in the doorway, his face drawn, jaw rigid. In his hand, the hatchet from the woodpile, his voice rasped. We made her a promise. I stumbled back, the photo slipping from my grasp. Ethan, please, put it down. He stepped closer, raising the hatchet just enough for its rusted edge to glint. His eyes glistened with something more than anger. Something broken. I shoved past him, shouldering hard enough that the hatchet banged against the railing. His breath hissed in my ear, but he didn't stop me. I ran up the stairs, through the living room, and slammed into the rain. I didn't look back until I reached my car. Then I saw him standing in the doorway, the hatchet at his side. His lips moved, barely audible over the storm. She'll never let you leave. I sat in the car the whole night. Parked at the 24-hour diner on Route 29, neon buzzing against the windshield. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every time I blinked, the scratched-out eyes of the boy stared back. By morning, exhaustion dragged me back to the house. It stood as before, paint flaking, windows still. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the air was heavier, thick with something metallic. The phone rang. I jumped. The landline had been silent for years. My hand shook as I lifted the receiver. Clara. My mother's voice. Clear, close. Remember the jar? The one you dropped? I made you pick up every shard. The memory hit me like ice water. I was small, maybe 8, standing in the kitchen as broken glass glittered across the floor. My mother's hand gripping my shoulder, forcing me to my knees as blood welled from my fingertip where the shard had cut me. Say it, the voice whispered. Say you'll never tell. The line clicked dead. I dropped the receiver, heart hammering. My finger throbbed phantom pain where the scar still faintly traced my skin. That night I called Marjorie. Something's wrong, I said as soon as she answered. The phone, it was her. She knew about the jar, about the cut. How could she? Marjorie's silence stretched. Then she whispered, not everything you buried stayed buried. That house, it holds things, memories, people. Be careful. Clara. Her voice cracked, and before I could ask more, the line went dead. I sat in the dark with the receiver in my lap, the dial tone droning until it became part of the silence. Sleep was shallow again. I dreamed of the basement, my mother's hand pressing down on my shoulder, a boy's shoe lying in the dirt, the D shining faintly, her breath hot in my ear. You held the light steady, Clara, you promised. I woke gasping. The basement light was on. The basement light still glowed faint beneath the door. I stood frozen at the edge of the living room, my breath shallow. My skin prickled with the memory of the voice on the phone, my mother whispering about the broken jar, the blood on my finger. No one else could have known that. I pressed my palm to my scar, still faint on the pad of my finger after all these years. It pulsed as if newly cut. I should have left, driven to another state. Told myself I'd done enough by showing up for the funeral. But something tethered me here, deeper than guilt, deeper than fear. By morning, the rain eased into mist. I forced myself to go into town, thinking distance would help. At the grocery store, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Kemp. She hugged me quickly, smelling of powder and lavender. "Your mama kept to herself," she said. "Strange woman. But she sure kept that basement locked, said it was too damp for company." I smiled tightly, excused myself, and left with milk and crackers I didn't want. Her words circled my mind like crows. When I returned, Ethan's truck was parked outside. My stomach clenched. He was in the kitchen, arms folded, staring at the linoleum as if it might split open. He didn't look up until I set the groceries down. "You're digging in places you shouldn't," he said. "I'm just cleaning." His eyes lifted then, glassy with something like grief. "You don't remember, do you?" "I remember plenty," I said, though it sounded hollow even to me. He shook his head slowly. "Then you're lucky." He brushed past me, shoulders rigid, and left the house. Gravel crunched as his truck pulled away. I stood trembling, unsure whether I wanted to remember or not. That night, sleep pulled me under against my will. In the dream, I was small again, barefoot on the damp basement steps. My mother's nails dug into my shoulder. The bulb above flickered, casting long shadows across boxes stacked against the wall. She guided me to a corner where a pair of muddy sneakers sat. The boy was crying. His wrists were tied with rope. "Hold the light steady," she told me. "Don't drop it this time." When I woke, sweat plastered my hair to my forehead. The basement light glowed once again. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the living room seemed to bend closer. I dialed Marjorie in the dark. She answered after several rings, her voice thick with sleep. "It's happening again," I whispered. Her silence stretched. Then she said, "Clara, when you were little, you used to wake screaming. You'd say you saw someone in the basement. Your mother told you it was just nightmares, but they weren't yours, were they? They were hers. And she passed them to you." Tears stung my eyes. "Why didn't anyone stop her?" "She was family," Marjorie said softly. "And family's a chain you can't break. You can only carry." The line clicked dead. The next day I went back to the basement. I told myself I needed proof, something solid to know whether I was losing my mind. The boxes still waited, sagging. The shoe with the D inside the heel lay where I'd left it. The clay crusting the sole was distinct, red as rust. I knew that ground. It clung to everything near the lake, staining your hands, your clothes. I turned the shoe over and noticed something I hadn't before. A small notch in the rubber sole, as though someone had carved into it with a knife. Not random, but a letter. RDR, the initials hit me like a blow. A name I half remembered from childhood, whispered by classmates on the playground. Daniel Rowe. A boy from down the road who vanished one summer long before I left for college. My vision blurred. Behind me, the door creaked. Ethan stood halfway down the stairs. His hand tightened on the railing, veins bulging. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said hoarsely. "Ethan," I whispered. "What did she do?" His gaze dropped. He didn't answer. Instead, he descended the last steps, hatchet in his hand again. He dragged the edge against the wall, scraping wood to splinters. The sound tore through me worse than words. "I don't want to hurt you, Clara," he said. "But promises don't die with the people who make them." He raised the hatchet. Not at me, but at the photograph still lying torn on the box. He swung, the blade biting through paper and wood. I flinched. He dropped the weapon and left without another word. The silence afterward was suffocating. That evening, the phone rang again. My hands shook as I lifted it. This time her voice was clear, close. "Do you remember the pond?" My breath caught. The pond behind the house had long since dried, its bed cracked and weedy. But once when I was 8, I had fallen in. At least that's what I told myself. My mother had dragged me out, her hands clawing into my arms, my mouth filled with mud and weeds. "You were coughing," she whispered now through the line. "And he was coughing too. But only one of you came up." The memory slammed into me. A boy's arm thrashing beside me, pale in the water. His eyes wide, mouth filling with mud. My mother's voice sharp above me. "Don't scream. You'll scare your brother." The line went dead. I dropped the phone, my breath tearing in my chest. The house groaned around me as if it too remembered. I knew then there was no leaving, not until I opened that door and saw it through. The final night, rain lashed again against the windows, harder than before. The power flickered. Shadows bent across the walls. I stood before the basement door, hand trembling on the knob. Behind me, the floor creaked. Ethan's voice came low, broken. "Don't do it." I turned, tears streaking my face. He looked smaller now, hunched, eyes red. The hatchet was gone. His hands shook at his sides. "You'll remember," he said, his voice fraying. "And once you do, you won't come back from it." I swallowed, throat raw. "Ethan?" My fingers closed around the knob. The wood was cold beneath my palm, swollen from rain. The draft from below curled up, damp and earthy, carrying the faintest trace of decay. I leaned closer, my lips trembling as the words broke free. "Ethan, I remember." The silence that followed was absolute. I twisted the knob, and the door began to open. I never wanted to come back to Vermont. Not in winter, not in autumn, not in any season that might remind me of the quiet, suffocating childhood I'd worked so hard to bury. But when my mother died last December and left the farmhouse on Old Creek Road in my name, I had no choice. Probate, lawyers, utilities, taxes, it was all waiting for me. I told myself I'd only stay a week. Just long enough to sign some papers, clean up what I could, and hand the place over to a realtor. That was the plan. A week, nothing more. But the first night I stepped inside, the silence pressed down on me, heavy and accusing. It was as though the house itself remembered everything I had tried to forget. The snow followed me up I-89, falling heavier the closer I got to Brattleboro. The plows hadn't passed Old Creek Road yet, so the last mile felt like pushing through a grave of white. The farmhouse loomed at the end, its roof hunched under snow, its windows dark and blind. My breath fogged in the air as I stepped out, the cold slicing sharp through my coat. For a moment I thought about turning the car around, driving until the memories disappeared in the rear view. But the thought of unfinished paperwork, unanswered calls from the lawyer, and the steady pile of bills waiting in my Boston apartment held me in place. I climbed the steps, boots crunching on the thin crust of ice, and reached under the porch's third board. The key was still there, wrapped in wax paper. I hadn't touched it in 15 years. It slid too easily into the lock. The door groaned open, releasing a breath of air so stale it felt alive, thick with dust, mothballs, and a faint sweetness underneath, like rot covered in perfume. I flicked the light switch. The bulb shuddered, hummed, then spilled a sickly yellow across the hallway. The wallpaper, green roses faded to gray, peeled in curling strips. The carpet reeked faintly of damp earth. I dragged my suitcase inside and forced myself forward with brisk efficiency, as if momentum alone could keep the unease at bay. I told myself I was 31, a paralegal, rational, grounded. A house is just wood and nails. A house is not memory, but when I shut the door, I locked it. Not against strangers. Against what I already feared might be inside. The first 2 nights were restless. The wind screamed down from the hills, rattling the windows like loose teeth. Shadows bent wrong in the corners, lengthening even when the lamps were steady. The fridge hummed in cycles too long, its motor stalling as though it were listening. On the second night, footsteps woke me. Slow, deliberate, moving across the attic directly above my bed. My chest froze with the weight of listening. The attic had been nailed shut years ago after a leak ruined the insulation. But the steps moved back and forth as steady as a metronome. At dawn I found no courage to check, though I told myself it was snow settling on the roof. The next morning, Uncle Matthew appeared on the porch. He looked smaller than I remembered, though his shoulders were still broad from decades of construction work. His beard was white now, his eyes red-rimmed, not just from the cold. "Caroline," he said, and then after a pause, "Lena." The name jolted me. I hated it. My mother had used it when she was angry, when she wanted to remind me I was only a child. Hearing it from him opened a trapdoor in my stomach. "Caroline," I corrected, a little too sharply. We sat at the kitchen table. I made him coffee, though he didn't touch it. He kept staring at the stairs, his mouth pressed flat. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said finally. His hands trembled around the mug. "But you shouldn't stay here." I forced a laugh. "Why? It's just a house." "I'll be gone in a week," he shook his head. "You'll find things. Things she kept locked away. Don't," his throat worked, "don't open the trunk in her room. Promise me that." I blinked. "The cedar chest? With the quilts?" His eyes filled with something sharp, something close to panic. "Promise me." I didn't answer, and he stood so abruptly the chair scraped across the linoleum. Without another word, he left, his boots crunching into the snow. After he was gone, I tried to ground myself in who I was, Caroline, not Lena. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table, made spreadsheets of expenses, called the realtor, organized folders, order, numbers, lists. This was how I stayed myself. But the house resisted. The charger flickered, the cursor jumped, the screen went black, though the battery was full. My pen bled across the page, smearing my neat columns of figures until they blurred into nothing. Every rational structure I tried to build collapsed under the house's quiet refusal. Caroline, I whispered aloud, shaking the pen in frustration. I am Caroline. From the ceiling vent above, a soft hiss answered, Lena. My chest constricted. My hand released the pen without permission. My lips parted as if to say yes, though I bit down hard enough to taste copper. I will not. I will not. But when the silence thickened afterward, it felt like punishment, like holding my breath too long. Sleep refused me. On the 8th night, the footsteps returned above my head, circling faster, lighter, not adult strides, but the patter of children running in frantic play. Dust sifted down through the seams, soft gray that smelled of bone. I lay curled on the bed, nails digging into my palms, listening as the running stopped all at once. Silence pressed close, and then a single set of feet moved to the top of the attic stairs. I heard the boards groan under that small weight. And then nothing. Waiting. I did not close my eyes again. The next morning, I found the attic door no longer nailed shut. The bent nails lay scattered on the landing, blackened as if burned. The door gaped a few inches, breathing cold air down the stairwell. I couldn't make myself open it wider. I couldn't even touch the knob. Instead, I went back to the trunk. The shoes waited inside, damp leather reeking faintly of mildew. I touched the cracked Mary Janes, my hand trembling, and the memory flickered sharper this time. A child's laugh, high and clear, a tug on my sleeve. The shape of another beside me at the table. Yellow fabric brushing my arm. Who are you? I whispered. Who were you? A sudden burn seared my palm. I dropped the shoe, and in the dim light I swore I saw smoke curl from its tongue. The coil of rope beneath was charred black, fibers fused by fire. I lifted it, gagging at the stench. As it uncoiled, a scrap of fabric fell free, yellow with faint green roses. The same pattern as the wallpaper, the same as the fragment buried in the floorboards. A dress, my breath caught. My hand shook. There had been another child, but when I tried to shape the name, it slipped from my tongue like ash. The house grew hungrier. By the 10th day, the doors were sealed with resin so thick it looked poured from inside the wood. Black mold oozed in ribbons from the window frames, hardening into glossy ridges that held the glass in place. The pipes clotted completely, the faucet groaning before choking shut. No more tick-tick-tick, only silence. I hadn't eaten since the soup Mrs. Kearns left. The pantry cans were swollen with rust, labels curling into illegibility. When I tried one, the lid peeled back to reveal black pulp inside, glistening as if alive. I threw it away, bile rising in my throat. I tried screaming until my throat tore raw. No one came. The snow outside remained undisturbed, the yard untouched, the road invisible under drifts. I was sealed in. That night, the footsteps didn't stop at the attic door. They descended. I heard them clearly on the stairs, padding soft, deliberate, as if tiny feet dragged across each tread. I bolted my bedroom door, pressed my back against it, listening as the sound reached the landing, then the hallway, then paused directly outside my room. My breath clawed in my chest, shallow, panicked. A long silence followed, and then a knock. 3 sharp raps. Knuckle small, child small. I pressed my hands to my ears and screamed into them until the knocking stopped. By the 12th night, I could barely say my name. Each time I whispered Caroline, it came out thin, fragile, splintering. The vents hissed Lena in return, stronger, louder, insistent. My mother's voice, sometimes sharp, sometimes coaxing, always using that name. I tried to resist, to write Caroline again and again on scraps of paper, but each letter smeared before I could finish. The word itself refused permanence. I caught myself answering to Lena once. The voice called, and without thought I turned, whispering, "Yes." The moment it left my lips, I tasted soot. I don't know how much time passed before Matthew came again. His voice shook the silence, calling my name. Caroline this time, not Lena. I ran to the window, hammering at the glass. He was out there, face pale, eyes wild. In his hands he clutched a gas can, half buried in snow. "I'll burn it," he shouted. "I'll finish it this time." The smoke seeped faster through the walls, curling like fingers around the frame. My lungs screamed with it, bitter and choking. He smashed at the window with his fist, blood smearing across the cracked glass. "Get out. Please, you have to get out before it's too late. What's under the ashes?" I screamed back. My voice was hoarse, broken, his face twisted, grief and horror colliding. "Your sister. She was supposed to stay buried. You promised, Lena. You promised." His face twisted, grief and horror colliding. "Your sister. She was supposed to stay buried. You promised, Lena. You promised." The word hit me like a shovel to the chest. Sister. And with it came the memory, her hand in mine, small and warm, running through the hallways together. Her laugh higher than mine. Yellow dress, green roses, a rope, a scream, fire. The attic filling with smoke, my mother dragging me down the stairs, her grip iron on my wrist while another set of cries dwindled behind us. And then silence. I staggered back, bile burning my throat. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not real. I'm Caroline. I'm Caroline." But Matthew was still shouting, his words frantic. "It wasn't supposed to be you. She was supposed to take you, not her. We made the promise to keep her quiet." The smoke poured outward then, thick and black, swallowing him in seconds. His scream strangled mid-breath, muffled as though underwater. His hands clawed at the glass, leaving red streaks. And then nothing. Only handprints remained, pressed wet against the pane. I sank to the floor, shaking, gasping for air that no longer felt clean. Sister. A word I had lived 31 years without. But the memory was too sharp now to deny. She had been real. She had worn yellow. She had burned, and I had promised silence. The house groaned around me, walls pulsing with heat though no fire burned. Smoke seeped in steady waves, coating everything in bitter ash. My clothes stank of it, my hair stiff with soot. The vents breathed louder each night, my mother's voice blending with a child's laughter until I could no longer separate them. The footsteps returned, circling overhead down the stairs across the hall to my door. Sometimes they knocked, sometimes they only waited. I no longer bolted the door. I no longer fought the name. Caroline faded each day, thinner, weaker. Lena was the one they wanted. Lena was the one who remembered. I tried to anchor myself in something tangible. I dug again at the floorboards, deeper this time until my nails split and bled. The wood gave way in clumps of black ash. Beneath lay not emptiness but remnants. Tiny, bleached teeth smooth as seeds. A lock of hair curled tight with soot. The yellow fabric, larger now, unfurling into the shredded remnant of a child's dress. The sight drove me to my knees. My chest heaved with something between grief and nausea. The smell of burned rope filled the room, sharp and acidic. When I turned, the coil from the trunk lay unwound across the hallway, though I had left it shut. The rope slithered like a living thing, curling toward me, charring the floor as it moved. I stumbled back, pressing against the wall, but there was nowhere to go. From the vent above, my mother's voice rasped. "You promised." I pressed my hands to my ears, shaking my head violently. "I'm not Lena. I'm Caroline." The laughter answered, light and cruel. Footsteps pounded the attic, dozens of them racing in circles until the ceiling rattled dust into my hair. My lungs clawed for air, the smoke thickening. I collapsed to my knees. When I woke, the rope was gone. The floor was black with burn marks that hadn't been there before. My arms ached, skin streaked with soot. My throat tasted of smoke. I stumbled into the bathroom, turned on the faucet for water, but only resin poured out. Thick, black, glistening. It oozed across the porcelain, hardening into glossy ridges. I backed away, gagging. The house was sealing itself, not just against the world, but against me. It was digesting me slowly, pulling me back into its ribs. On the 15th night, I heard her. Not just laughter. Not just my mother's commands, a different voice. Higher, smaller, fragile as a breath. "Why did you leave me?" I froze on the landing, my hand hovering over the banister. The words slid down the stairwell, soft as ash falling. My knees trembled. "Who are you?" I whispered. The silence stretched, then the voice again. "I was yours. You promised." My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs might crack. "I don't remember," I shouted, desperate, raw. "I don't remember you." The air thickened with smoke. My vision blurred. But in the blur, I saw her just for a moment. A flicker at the end of the hallway. Small frame, yellow dress torn, charred at the hem, skin gray with soot, eyes hollow, teeth too white against the ash. She smiled, lips cracked, and then she was gone. I collapsed against the wall, sobbing. Days lost meaning. I scratched tally marks into the kitchen table, but each morning they were gone. The wood smoothed over as though it had healed. My phone flickered static images of my own face, distorted eyes, black pits. My laptop screen lit with a single word, burned into the pixels. Lena. I tried to leave. I hammered at the door until my fists bled, but the wood only groaned, sap bleeding thickly from the seams. I tried to break the window, throwing a chair with all my strength, but the glass shuddered and held, swallowing the chair like water until it vanished into the pane itself. The house wasn't just sealed. It was alive. I began to hear her everywhere, humming in the pipes, whispering in the vents, giggling in the cracks. Sometimes I caught the scent of smoke curling from my own hair, though I hadn't touched fire. Sometimes I found footprints in the ash dusting the floor, small, bare, leading in circles, leading nowhere. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think beyond the pounding in my head. Caroline was gone. The name no longer held weight in my mouth. Every time I said it, it dissolved like ash on my tongue. But Lena, when they called that name, I felt myself step forward, felt my lips answer before I could stop them. Yes. Always yes. On the 18th night, I heard the attic door creak wide. I rose without thought, my body moving as if pulled by strings. Smoke poured down the stairs, thick, suffocating. Tiny footsteps pattered above, faster, then stilled, waiting. At the top of the landing, I paused. My hand hovered over the knob. The voice drifted down, soft, coaxing. Come back, Lena. It's your turn now. Tears blurred my eyes. I whispered, I can't. I'm Caroline. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. The door swung open. Darkness yawned, blacker than any night I'd ever known. The smell of burned fabric choked me. My legs trembled, but I stepped forward. The laughter swelled. Dozens of voices, small and bright, circling, spinning. The floorboards shook under the weight of phantom feet. My chest clenched as if rope wound tighter around my lungs. From the far corner, she stepped into view. My sister. Yellow dress in tatters. Smoke coiling from her hair. Eyes hollow yet fixed on mine. She raised one hand, fingers blackened with soot, and beckoned. You promised. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound never came. Smoke poured in, filling me, burning from the inside. My knees buckled. The last thought that clung to me was not Caroline. Not even Lena. It was the promise. The promise I had made as a child. To keep her secret. To take her place when the time came. And tonight the time has come. The attic swallowed me whole.